Welcome. This is the Drupal usability meeting for March 31st, 2023. I'm Benji Fisher, moderating and sharing my screen, and also present are Erin McHale, Ralph Kohler, and Simo Helston. So I'm looking at the issue for today's meeting, which is 335-0236. And I want to point out, no need to discuss it, but this issue was just fixed. Add more granular block content permissions. I see someone updated the title to make it block content rather than just block. And that's 1975064. So that's an issue that's been around for a while. We've discussed it previously. Is there anything more to say about this other than yay, it's been fixed? Do we have screenshots? Oh, we don't have screenshots. All right. Nothing else to say about that. Simo asked about sort of the general issue of when should we consider a change appropriate for Drupal core, and when should we say, well, that seems like a good idea, but it should be done in a contrib module. And I don't know if everyone is aware of the Drupal core gates. The page for this, I'll paste it into the Zoom chat. But for those watching the recording, it's a little bit hard. It's www.drupal.org and then /about/core/core-change-policies/core-gates. And there are six core gates that an issue is supposed to pass before it can be put into Drupal core, and the core committers will review these as needed. Accessibility is one, documentation, front-end performance, testing, and usability. So we are sort of the team in charge of that last gate. Maybe we can look at that for a moment, but also a sibling page is criteria for evaluating proposed changes. And I haven't looked at this page in a long time, but I think this addresses Simo's question of when an issue is appropriate for Drupal core and when it's should be done in contrib. So the following criteria are used by core developers. Just reading this top sentence here. In reviewing and approving proposed changes to Drupal core. Changes support and enhance the Drupal project aims. You could follow that on the correct branch. Risk, the proposed change doesn't introduce any significant issues or risks. Coding standards, demand. There is demonstrated demand and support for the change. Demand is indicated by comments on the Drupal.org issue system, or comments in forums, or the Drupal.dev email list. Ooh, we should update that. I think Slack is much more relevant than the Drupal dev email list these days. Usage. The change will be used by a substantial part of the installed Drupal base, as opposed to being relevant only to a small subset of Drupal users. And people often refer to the 80% use case. Is this going to be used by most sites or just a few? Last, technical debt. The benefits of the change justify additional code and resources. Every addition to the code base increases the quantity of code that must be actively maintained, e.g. updated to reflect new design changes or documentation approaches. Also, added code increases the overall Drupal footprint through added procedure calls or database queries. Benefits of a change must outweigh these costs. And that's something that is easy to overlook. Anytime you add code to Drupal, you're putting a maintenance burden on the maintainers. And I would add a point to this list. Maybe it's worth discussing, whether it can be implemented in contrib. So if something is if one proposed feature would be used by 80% of sites, but could also be implemented in a contrib module, and some other feature would only be used by 50% of sites, but would be really hard to do in contrib, really has to be done in core, I might consider the second feature as more appropriate for core than the first. But of course, I'd have to consider all the other criteria as well. Any questions or further comments on this list? Do you want to look at a particular issue and think about? Yeah, I think Simo pasted this link. Why isn't it opening for me? In the Zoom chat as something to consider. It's issue 2245767. Allow blocks to be configured to show or hide on 200/403/404 response pages. Shall we look at this issue on the criteria and consider it with those criteria, or other questions or comments first?
Yeah, so I was thinking one of the things in the criteria, I think it wasn't looking at, well, it's kind of maybe related to demand. So I think this, most of that example case 2245767, like I think I see it as something that is a kind of a proposing to add a shortcut to something that could be done in a kind of a with more numbers of steps, or kind of a more in a different way already in core, but this is kind of a shortcut to that functionality in a way, but not precisely. So kind of and also I don't know if that's something that would be that change, if it's something that could be improve performance or not as well. And this kind of from a usability point of view, I think this is something that might be different than from a performance point of view. So depending on how it triggers the different criteria. Because if we look at that issue 2245767, what it does, it adds another vertical tab for block visibility. So there are screenshots there. So it kind of adds to the complexity of configure block form.
Here's a slightly larger version screenshot.
So this is the current default version. So it has four of those different
pages, roles, content type, and vocabulary.
Yeah.
So I should look at the other screenshot.
So it adds a tab for response status. So when I look at this, I see that the current 4 tabs are something that is related to Drupal structure. So pages, rows, content types, and vocabularies are something that are kind of some Drupal terms. Like in the Drupal admin interface, we use those terms. But response status is something that's not, in a way, Drupal specific. So it kind of moves out of the Drupal context a little bit. And also it has those technical terms, response status. So if you ask like a site builder or kind of a content editor, what does it mean to have a response code 200, and what does it mean to have a response status success? So it's kind of especially that success is something that we usually don't see. So it's kind of adds to the kind of a cognitive load to figure out what does it mean to be success. It's kind of just nothing bad happens in a way. But those access denied and page not found, those are something that we can define in, I think, is it in site settings? So that's something that can be configured to point to specific page or specific URL, and then we could use those pages tab to kind of do this visibility setting. So
Right,
here,
let me give you a link. As usual, I set up a Drupal site for this meeting that anyone can log into. There's a link in the Zoom chat, and as usual, it's the Umami demo profile. So let's go to some DNE for does not exist, and we get the 404 page, and as Simo said, we can choose under configuration system basic site settings, error pages. So I'm allowed to put in a particular page that will be loaded whenever a page is not found, a 404 response. So I guess if I do this, let me add a page for this, add a basic page. Not found. Or and we suggest, people sometimes get cutesy with these. Ooh, I want to see if this is published. Having done that, I can say, it's 20, right? Better check that. Yes, node 20. And then when I try to load, DNE does not exist. If I reload this, I get this basic page I just created. And then I guess the only block I see here on the page, I guess maybe these are menu blocks. And then there's this footer block and the search block. So I think the search block is really important to have on the 404 page, but But let's say that for some reason I want to hide it. I could say don't show it on node 20, and then will that have the desired effect? No, it doesn't. If I actually go to node 20, then the search block goes away. But on a random page, it doesn't. So Simo, is that what you had in mind, or were you thinking of something else?
Yeah, that was what I was thinking. So yes, then let's see, I tried to add another extra block. So it kind of that's something that's not actually clear, that if we can't add, oh yeah, actually it might be something theme specific, because I just added an extra block from the blocks overview page. So maybe you can refresh now that. Yeah, so we can add specifically, we can add blocks here, but if the case was that we weren't able to hide a block, so that might be something that's kind of a.
Let me see how you configured this. Oh, interesting.
Oh, what, I hid it from those. No.
You wanted to show it on those.
Yeah.
Okay. So if we do that and reload, then it'll go away here, I assume.
Yeah.
And it'll appear here. No search block. Get this extra block.
Yeah. So now we can see that this example case is something that there are other usability issues here involved as well. So because I think, at least for me, it looks like those 404 page doesn't work. Custom 404 page doesn't work as it would be expected, because it doesn't, the blocks don't respect that page or that kind of URL thing or machine name for that node. So now that kind of for this example case, that kind of demonstrates that this is not duplicating feature, and this is something that might well be needed in the user interface. So this is something that kind of this testing kind of tells me that this is not as unnecessary as I thought it would be, I guess.
Yeah, one curiosity, since Umami is a multilingual site, it has the language switcher links. And if you look in the lower left-hand corner of the screen, that's going to the home page. Interesting. I was expecting it to go to the 404 page. So that's interesting.
So I wonder if you configure that block to only show on this URL that you have right now, so /DNE, if it will appear.
Block configuration. Let's see, here we go. Let me do that. Yeah, I think this will work. Oh. And I'm wrong. Interesting. This is, whoops, this is /DNE. Well, if that didn't work, then I don't think this will work either, but I have to try it. This page. Oh, that worked. Oh. Oh, multilingual doesn't work as well.
Yeah, these are interesting findings. Yeah, but what I thought originally was that this is duplicating existing functionality, because I didn't know that the 404 pages, maybe I had noticed sometime, but I didn't realize that at the moment, recall it at least, that they don't work the same way as other pages for those blocks. So that's a feature that's, I think, will be useful for a lot of people. So that kind of fits that criteria. But if I stick to the idea I had before, that this is kind of duplicating existing feature that could be done either in a more complex or kind of a different way. So I was thinking that should there be a criteria that we shouldn't have, like well, actually it is recommended in some cases to have multiple approaches to certain issues, and that's then, but to have in core multiple ways of doing a single thing, because that's kind of also a usability issue, that if there is not a standard way to do it or recommended way to do something, but multiple ways, then introducing another ways of doing the same thing shouldn't be maybe in core. So this one looks like it isn't one of those kind of issues.
Right.
But
right, I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah, I do like Simo's idea to include something. If we were to do this, include something under the existing page task, because under there you're configuring which pages to show it on, and so particularly if you've like made a custom 404 page, like you might not think of those as any different to, you know, any other page. So why wouldn't you find that under the page tab?
I also wonder. So shall we, having started to look at this, yes, this is the issue. Having started to look at this issue, shall we make a recommendation? Is this a good idea or not?
I would like to add another point in regards of the usability of that feature. For me, it's quite confusing compared to the other tabs, and about a pattern we've talked before, that per default with that feature, you have if no checkbox is checked, everything is selected, or the block is shown to success pages as well as to access denied and page not found. And on other pages, we have that pattern of the radio button that was, I'm not sure in which issue it was. I guess Simo commented on it a few months back, where we recommended to use the pattern used on the pages tab, for example. And that way, it isn't necessary to read the description and it's clearer, but still for me, it's always, of course, per default now, a blog is shown for the successful loaded pages as well as the access denied and page not found pages. And I'm not sure if that is a good default value as well, if it's about pages in general. So maybe
I think what you're talking about is this pattern, which I think none of us likes.
Yeah.
If nothing is selected, all will be allowed, rather than
exactly that one.
having the explicit radio buttons. Roles not
And it's
restricted.
pretty inconsistent between the tabs. I guess Badier commented on one of the issues that it's technically challenging to make it consistent across all tabs. Yeah, exactly. It was about the negate the condition checkbox on a few of them. That was the initial topic. We've talked about it. But with that error code tab or the pages tab, or how it's called now, on a response status tab now, and that mixed of 200, 403 and 404, it's quite confusing, and it always makes me think.
Yeah,
each time I was a bit issue.
Yeah, I think at least that I mean, I know a lot of people who wouldn't know that you should check that success box if you want to hide it from access denied and page not found. So that kind of it should have some kind of a explanation or kind of a content creators or some kind of different kind of default.
Yeah, but if you have, for example, the pattern with the radio button underneath, then it's clear.
Mm.
For example, the radio button show those options above if checked, or the other way around. Yeah, show the, yeah.
So yeah, could we add, I'm wondering, building on what was suggested earlier, if two check boxes on here below the text field, but above the radio buttons, one for page not found and one for access denied. And to me, the way that would read is that if you check either of those boxes, and then with the radio buttons, you can say show, you can decide whether you want to show or hide.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if that's making it a little bit more complex.
Yeah.
That would also mean we don't need a success checkbox because
Yeah, I think it would be sensible to have because that's kind of a special cases of pages. So I think nobody cares about what is the response status. They care about what page you are shown, and that we have those access denied page and page not found page. So it would be for a kind of a non-technical user, it would make a lot of sense to have those on the pages tab.
maybe we need a follow-up issue to, maybe not a directly follow-up issue, but like just another issue to bring some more consistency to these tabs, because obviously they're quite inconsistent with how you know, between them.
Yeah, I think we've talked about that before, that we should have some more consistency here. And in fact, I think we've specifically recommended using the radio button pattern consistently. Given that I'm pretty sure we have an issue to be more consistent in this, I wouldn't consider that a blocker for this particular issue.
No, I don't think so. It's just if one doesn't exist, maybe we should create one kind of thing.
Oh, and Ralph pasted a link into the chat.
That's the first comment where the status 200 got introduced or suggested.
So that's the same issue we've been looking
Yeah.
at, but you're directing me to a particular comment.
I'd like to be able to show a block on a 500 pages, 501, 503. Really nice to be able to show some blocks there.
Oh, I don't think that's possible.
No, it's not, but it would be nice if it would.
Oh, and this comment, it's number 126 on the issue, did suggest using the radio buttons, and people argued against it. Problem is that selecting none and negating is the same as selecting all and negating. Is that true? Selecting all and negating would mean it never shows up. I think selecting none and negating should be the default and should mean show it everywhere. I disagree with comment 127.
Or wouldn't be the default better to the show for the selected response status radio button and success 200 checked? That is what I would consider a good default value for new blocks.
Well, that would be a change in behavior, right? So currently, blocks do show up on 403 and 404 pages, and
The default, okay.
If you make success the default, that would be a change.
Mm-hmm.
If the default is it shows on everything, then the default for new blocks might be show for the select response status and check all the 3 checkboxes. Then it's completely clear to the user.
Sort of not the pattern we use for these block conditions. By default, nothing is filled in, nothing is filled in, nothing is filled in, nothing is filled in. And that means not restricted.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we have the not restricted message for language, roles, and content type, but we don't have it for vocabulary.
Yeah.
Yet another problem with this page.
I think, yeah, one of the
So do we want to make a recommendation on this, or do people want to think about it some more before doing that? Ooh, it goes back to 2014.
Yeah.
I like our idea to recommend adding it to the Pages tab.
So you'd like to make it part of this?
Yeah, and I think I would have the two checkboxes for one for not found, one for access denied, above in between the text field and the radio buttons.
I'd actually put it after the radio buttons, because then we could have those that, in a way that we could have checkboxes to say that include also on 403, include also on 404, and the pages list would be the one that would say show or hide from the selected.
But then what if you wanted to show it on everything except 404 and 403?
Then you don't. Then you just have hide for the listed pages and unchecked both of the checkboxes.
Ooh, this is complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then it would it would probably need to have default for having those both checked, because otherwise it would be kind of changing the current behavior.
Well, what if the default then was they were unchecked, but by checking them, it would be like hide on not found or hide on access denied, because maybe you, and by default,
Yeah.
the block would show up.
Yeah,
But
that
then,
would actually make, I think, more sense, because then you wouldn't, if you don't want to specifically hide them, then you don't need to kind of go to the bottom of the dialog. So you can just, if you know that you can hide them from there, then you can just, it doesn't intervene with the, like the flow of work, what you used to do before.
yeah, because I think most blocks would be useful on a 404 access denied page, particularly like a search or a menu, or which are, common blocks that you see, other than the, site title and things like that, which again, you probably do want on the 404 or access denied.
Yeah.
And from a user's perspective, it's good to have consistency across the site. So,
and then if you want to have only something that only shows on 404, that's kind of something like maybe you would like to look at these instead, that kind of block, and you want to put it in as block, then you would have a blank list of pages, show for the listed pages, and then you would have unchecked boxes for hiding.
is that how that works, or does it have no effect if the text box is empty?
Oh, it hides from the listed pages. I think it should have. It also has, if you have it blank, and it still has that show for the listed pages, so it should also hide from the listed pages.
Yeah, so like,
we blank this out, save, then that's the same as no restriction, I believe. Right, pages not restricted. And so it should show up on my node 20, which is my custom 404 page. And it should also show up on my does not exist page. So it shows up here and it shows up here. So if we say hide on the listed pages, I think it'll be just the same.
Yeah.
It still says not restricted, even though I've changed it
Yeah,
from show
okay,
to
so
hide. And it will
so-
still show up here. No, it doesn't. Oh, this is a disaster. Oh, it's so inconsistent. We've got to change this.
yeah, so I think so.
We have to change it all at once and make it work sensibly.
Yeah. So I think it's so for the listed pages. I think it's kind of a yeah. It doesn't care about that radio button if it's empty, I guess. So it kind of just bypasses it. Oh, no.
Here's a fun idea. What if we make it more complicated by having two text areas, one for pages you want to specifically show on, and one for pages you want to hide on? I don't think that's necessarily better, but it's possibly logically better than what the current behavior is.
But it's more complicated.
Yeah, it is.
But yeah, but I know it like
Using.
but I think yeah, sometimes it would be nice to be able to use a wildcard to kind of show it on certain group of pages, but then some sub pages or some subpaths to hide it again. So that's kind of a yeah, there is a use case there, but
Okay.
Like it might make more sense to do something like git ignore patterns, where where you say show it on all user pages, but hide it on user, I don't know, who pages or user star two.
or we ought to have a exclamation mark in URL. Not in the beginning, not in the beginning, yes. It has to start with slash.
So just be clear, this doesn't currently work. We would
Yeah.
have to totally change this feature to make
But
this work. This is pretty much the way git ignore patterns work.
Yeah, so I think that yeah, that's something that kind of yeah, I know a lot of people who would like that.
I'm just reading the description right now, and it says the last part of the description, yeah, is the front page. So you can put in those angle brackets front. One option would be the same for like 404 and 403. Like you could do like a angle brackets for like not found or or 404 or something. Because then it's technically not a new pattern. It's possibly not like, it's obviously not as user friendly as buttons, but there's an argument that like in parallel with the idea that you just had there, where you could like negate specific ones, it does give you more flexibility in an approach like this.
I like this idea.
So let's consider let's consider the two options. If I'm going to show it only on particular pages, then by default, it won't show up on DNE. Because presumably I haven't listed that. So then if I do want it to show up on a page not found, I could add this. So that would work. If I, on the other hand, if I hide it on a specific list of pages, then it's by default going to show up.
No.
And then I add this to the list and it won't show up if I don't want it to show up. So I guess that works. Am I making sense?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's because at this point, it's no different to showing or hiding it on specifically on the front page, which is also, like a 403 or 404 could be any arbitrary underlying node or whatever. So there's a lot of parallels between how we do the front page and how we do a 403 and 404.
From my understanding, in that example right now with hide for the listed pages, and with if 403 and 404 would work, then the block wouldn't be shown on the DNE page, isn't it?
Say
Yeah.
that again.
I just ask in the example you have here right now, and if the 404 and 403 tag would work like front, then in the example of the DNE page you had, the block wouldn't be shown, right?
Right, that's how we would want it to work.
Okay, because then I misunderstood before.
Okay.
Because I thought you meant it would be shown on the DNE that way. Okay, then I understood. Thank you.
Do you still like the exclamation mark idea, Benji? Or are you indifferent? Because if you did that, then you could get rid of the radio buttons, and I don't know if that's better or worse.
Yeah, I think the exclamation mark is it should be kind of a different thing, but I think this 404, 403 in the style we use, like the same way we have front, that's a different thing. So they don't need to be a single change.
Yeah,
But
I wasn't thinking doing them all together. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm thinking that if that exclamation is it kind of a well, when you have to type the paths anyway, it kind of makes it for certain users a bit more difficult to fill than if you can just select buttons, but you have to type the paths anyway. So adding exclamation mark is not such a big thing.
Maybe it could introduce more complexity because, like, if you wanted to, hang on, let me think. If you wanted to hide it on all pages, you could do like exclamation mark star. But that is a little bit more involved, or could be more confusing than simply just radio buttons. So maybe that's like, I think we just have to, I think it's important to balance functionality and usability here. Maybe the exclamation mark idea, well, yeah, it gives you more flexibility. Maybe it crosses that line a bit too far. It doesn't strike that balance for me, I think.
Yeah, it could be some kind of contribution module to have this kind of a Pro page visibility module.
Yeah, I think it simplifies things because you wouldn't need the radio buttons if you had the negate option. So it would be simpler in that. And I think it would let you do things that you can't currently do.
Yeah.
Like these first two lines, if you want it to show up only on user pages, but not on some subset of user pages, I don't think you can do that with the current system.
And if somebody wants to have this kind of a show hide thing, I think it would be possible to have some kind of widget that keeps working the way it used to work. So you just type in and then show hide, and then it fills in the correct stuff.
Right, whichever version we put in core, someone could add a contrib module that it gives you the other option.
Well, also, actually, I think you could do what you just said, because remember, you can add multiple instances of a single block. So you could add two instances. One of them could be configured to show on just /user/star, and the other one could be configured to hide on. Oh no, that wouldn't work, because sometimes you would end up with the block twice. No, that's not good. Yeah, okay, never mind.
Yeah.
But I guess the point is still there that technically, like, because you can add multiple instances, there is ways to like effectively have like OR type conditions there. I don't know how well it will work, that would work, but like it's possible in some cases, I suppose. Like maybe if you wanted to show the block on the front page and I don't know. Never mind. Just ignore me now.
Oh, here's a sort of radical idea for this page. Sort of you sort of a paragraph style interface where there's nothing here, but then you can choose to add a restriction, add a visibility restriction, and then you can choose whether you want a language or pages or roles or whatever restriction, and you put it in, and as part of the process you choose whether this is going to be a show restriction or a hide restriction. And I think that would sort of be more logical, that by default there is no restriction and until you add one.
Yeah, it's or like how with the ECA module, it has a sort of sets of conditions, and they take a similar kind of approach where you start adding conditions like that.
And also, yeah, it's also a bit like, well, it's not really, but it kind of reminds me of adding, let's say, filters to views.
Adding filters to views, yeah. We are running up towards the end of the hour, so what are our next steps? Are we in a good shape to leave a comment on the original issue? I kind of think not, but maybe. Go ahead.
Well, I'm thinking that if we would want to start moving towards adding individual visibility criteria, like one by one, then one of those options could be that response status. Then it could work as it's suggested, and then we could just allow in the future, we could allow user to either add it or not add it as visibility filter. So in a way, if we want to go to adding individual visibility criteria, then we could just as well approve that 404 as it is now.
Yeah, I don't think any of these big discussions or suggestions we've been talking about should block the 404 feature.
Yeah. So the only concern I had about, that is it's adding another tab. But if we are thinking about, or do we want to suggest adding it as the front page, like 403, 404, like
Yeah,
that?
that's the one thing I think we should have put a comment on that,
Mm.
not as a firm recommendation,
Mm.
just as a suggestion to consider.
Yeah, I think, I agree. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Does calling them 404 and 403 work? Like, should we be more like, access denied or not found instead?
I think we want something relatively short, and again, since we're just making it a suggestion, not a recommendation, further discussion can happen on the issue.
True. So the overall recommendation is kind of take a similar pattern to what we do for the front page.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and that is the end of the hour. So someone should make this suggestion. Again, not a recommendation, but just a suggestion that instead of adding another vertical tab, we add the 403 and 404 options to the existing pages vertical tab. And we'll be back next week. Thank you for coming.
Thanks.
Thank you. Have a nice weekend.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Does somebody celebrate Eastern, what's it called? Good Friday in English?
Oh, is next? Yeah, I think you're right. Next Friday will be Good Friday. I don't celebrate that myself, but
Yeah,
I don't.
then it's not a problem. Yeah, so next week then.
Yeah.
okay. Bye
Yeah,
bye.
okay.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.